Hi, it's Rachel Maldonado. Belief in the human spirit and desire to connect is the reason I want to tell your story and mine. And I am with Dr. Kirk Moore, a plastic surgeon. Tell me about that.
Well, hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me. Um, so yeah, I'm a plastic surgeon that kind of stepped outside of my, bounds of expertise, right?
Wow. What do you mean? That sounds interesting.
Um, so I don't know how far back you want me to go, but my story kind of starts um, in I went to medical school in 1989. I graduated in 93. Um, I spent 3 years in the Navy as a Navy flight surgeon from 94 to
Mm.
97. And then I finished my plastic surgery training in 2001. I moved to Idaho, was there for about 4.5 years. And then at the end of 2005, I moved down here to the Salt Lake City area in Utah, and I've been here ever since.
Wow. And so for the military, are you still connected?
No, I was active duty for 3 years. I was reserves for five, and I was separated in July of 2001.
Yes. And was that by choice? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I used they had an HPSP program called the Health Professions Scholarship Program to pay for medical school. So they paid for 3 years of my school, my second through fourth year of medical school. And so in turn, I had to give them back 3 years of active duty, a total of an 8 year commitment and 5 years in the reserves.
Yeah. So you have been active duty as of recently, and are you still connected in any way with the military now, or that has finished?
No, no, no. Maybe I misspoke. I've been out since 2001.
Okay. Yes.
So yeah.
And then have you just done the plastic surgery? You chose to stay within that specialty?
Yeah, so in when I finished my training in 2001, I moved to Idaho and I went into private practice and I've been in private practice as a plastic surgeon ever since.
Yeah. And how have you been finding that?
Well, until the last 4 or 5 years, it was pretty good.
It was pretty good. Yes.
Yeah.
You
So
know, that is definitely a lucrative. Everybody wants to look young and they want to look good. So the plastic surgeons are in business. But then, what do you mean there was a slight change?
well, I kind of went off the reservation in 2001 and decided that when COVID came around, that because other doctors refused to treat their patients, and I didn't think that they were treating people appropriately, and decided to abandon them, I started treating people for COVID.
Mm,
And I had to relearn all the microbiology and all of viral and bacterial information that I hadn't studied probably since 1989 or 90. Um, and just kind of did a bunch of research and a bunch of studying and realized that, yeah, I can do this. And so for the entire year, and well, actually, I've been treating people ever since, but certainly in 2020 for a good year and a half, I was treating people according to, Zev Zelenko, his profile, his protocol that he had with hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, vitamin C, vitamin D. I then kind of found ivermectin towards the end of 2020 and started treating people with ivermectin. I was doing house calls for people, going to their house and putting them on IV steroids to keep them out of the hospital. I did that 3 or 4 times. And then I had some people then subsequent to that would come to the office and come in for steroids. And I treated them here out of my clinic, twice a day, 12 hours apart, along with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, vitamin C, vitamin D, the whole thing, high dose vitamin C through an IV bag, any number of things. And so that was kind of the beginning of my journey.
wow. So from plastic surgery to treating for COVID. And was it intensely busy during that time in 2020?
Yeah, I probably took care of 800 to 1,000 patients, whether it just be through phone calls and calling prescriptions or seeing them in my office, to seeing them at my house.
Wow.
I'd have people knocking on my door, neighbors would know of me, through various chat groups that we had online. And so I got, I got exceedingly busy. It was a big part of my practice. It actually wasn't a big part of my practice. It was my practice there for a couple of months because we were shut down. So I had to close my doors, and you know, and just kind of became a primary care doc. Um,
Wow. Yes. So the
so
hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and those, the medicines that were not touted at the time, did you get a bunch of pushback from others, or no, you were just swamped? People were really responding to this.
Well, I never got pushback from any of my patients.
Yes.
As a plastic surgeon, you tend to be kind of solo, so I didn't get a lot of pushback from any of my colleagues because I didn't really have a lot of interaction with them. Um, but I did get pushback from pharmacies,
Mm,
and I'd have to chase down prescriptions. I completely wiped out the whole Walgreens system of their hydroxychloroquine in March of 2020. And then when I tried to order it through my medical suppliers, because I get medications, I have an operating room here in my office.
right.
And so when I tried to order it through my own suppliers, it was quote on back order, unquote. And it actually took me over a year to get any hydroxychloroquine in my office. Um, the federal government decided to buy it all up after Trump made that statement. Um, and so they essentially, they'll say they bought it, but essentially they confiscated all of all of the hydroxychloroquine in the United States, and made it next to impossible for us to get it. Um, so I was getting pushback from pharmacies. I used to be, I'm a physician in the United States in Utah. I have a license in Idaho and Utah, but I can call in prescriptions across the country.
Right.
Um, and so I was calling in prescriptions, all over the United States. And I remember distinctly one pharmacist in Connecticut refused to prescribe a hydroxychloroquine prescription for me because they said it was outside of my scope of practice. Um, and it really interesting that it's outside of my scope of practice because I've been to Africa on 3 humanitarian trips and prescribed, hydroxychloroquine for everybody on those humanitarian trips. So in 3 trips, probably close to 200 people. Um, and I was the primary prescriber for a large number of those people, and I prescribed hydroxychloroquine for everybody there because we all took it as a prophylaxis against malaria. Um, and yet when I try to call it in for another use, even though it wasn't scabies or it wasn't for lupus or anything like that, and again, off-label use became kind of you became, persona non grata, for calling in a prescription of ivermectin for somebody with COVID.
Wow. So you were treated so poorly by the pharmacies, and your patients, they were very grateful. They appreciated the treatment.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I never had any complaints, never had any issues. Matter of fact, everybody that I treated would send me their family, friends,
Mm,
neighbors. That's how it got to be so good. I wasn't advertising anything. I wasn't treating anybody. It's not something that I typically treat people for, the flu. I mean, as a physician, your friends, your close friends and family, when they need something, will call you. They get strep throat or something, they'll call you up, say, hey, my 10-year-old has strep throat. Can
right.
you call in an antibiotic for me? And that happens all the time. But on this level, and with daily phone calls, multiple calls, treating 20, 40, 50 people a week, in that, I mean, we're talking about in the time when it was exploding and everybody complaining of a runny nose, thought that they had COVID. So you're treating people. The kind of the aside to all of this is then you turn around and you talk to pharmacies. Nobody got treated for the flu in all of 2020. I mean, the medications that are typically, used in the flu, Advil, Tylenol, Flumidine, those things that you get prescriptions for. I remember talking to some of the local pharmacists and they didn't have any prescriptions for Flumidine through all of 2020.
Wow.
And typically flu season comes around, September, October, winter time frame, and they're getting dozens of them a week, if not more, depending on the size of the pharmacy. and some of the pharmacies didn't sell any. So, the abandonment of the medical community to treating their patients according to the way they treated them just a few months before was astounding to me.
Wow. So 1,000 patients treated for COVID. And then when the COVID vaccine got rolled out, what happened then?
Well, um, I'll take a step back. 1989, when I started medical school, that was when they gave the Hep B vaccines.
Yes.
Okay, so that was shortly after um, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act.
Mm.
Um, and so they hadn't put it on the childhood vaccine schedule yet. Um, so the protocol was 3 shots. And I think the protocol is one, the first one, and then you get another one a month later, and then you get another one 2 or 3 months later. So over the course of 3 or 4 months, you get all 3 shots. After my first shot of hepatitis B, and that this kind of tells you my age. All right. I was born in 1965. So my childhood vaccine schedule included an oral polio vaccine. And I think I may have had a tetanus shot at some point. All right. So I was pretty much unvaccinated. Um, and I hadn't had any kids yet and everything else. So 1999 comes around and I'm like, oh, okay, well, here, everybody get in line for your Hep B shot because you're now going to be a physician. You're going to be at risk for getting and contracting hepatitis B. And it was shortly after the HIV scare, and HIV was still a big deal. So we all get in line. Well, within 4 hours of my Hep B shot, I had a golf ball sized open area in my armpit, and essentially, I got shingles from my Hep B shot, and because of the timing of it. I knew that that's what it was due to. So
Mm.
I never got shot number 2 or shot number 3. And I've avoided vaccines ever since. Um, I had to get a yellow fever shot to go to Africa, but that was the only shot that I got. I took my kids and my wife at the time, and that's the only one they all got because it was the only mandatory one. Um, so my daughter is only partially vaccinated. She was born in 2003. We were doing I was not completely against vaccines at that point, but we had decided to kind of do a slower schedule with her. She ended up in the hospital when she was 2 years old with some vague abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea that would just not go away. We ended up having to come down to the hospital, came down to children. We lived in Idaho at the time and had to come down to Children's Hospital here in Salt Lake City. And the answer that they wanted was to take my daughter's gallbladder out at age 2. Um, so we were just kind of like, yeah, no thanks. We left the hospital. No more vaccines for her. And then my son was born in 2007. No more vaccines for him. And again, other than, like I said, the ones in the 20 teens when we went to Africa. Um, so that's my vaccine history, personal vaccine history. I was never anti-vaccine. I just was, I knew that we had a personal history with it.
Yes.
And I was skeptical of what the benefits were, and, whether they actually really benefited people. And I always questioned, why are we giving hepatitis B to a newborn baby when it's a bloodborne disease? You get it from blood transfusions or you get it from IV drug abuse or sexual contact. And last thing I know, last I know, there aren't any newborn babies that are, sexually active, getting blood transfusions or exchanging needles with drug addicts.
Right.
I just, that was my kind of, my attitude. um 2021, well, 2020 comes around and you start hearing, kind of, nothing's going to get back to normal until we have a vaccine. And it just kind of raised my antenna a little bit. And I decided that in 2021, when it not only were the vaccines available,
Mhm.
but they were going to make them mandatory. I decided to open up a vaccine clinic. so that I could provide vaccines for my patients.
Mm. And what was your intent for the vaccine clinic?
To take care of my patients the way they wanted to.
Yeah.
So um, I I've always been I mean, as a surgeon, we have informed consent on everything. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have to, I do a breast augmentation. I've got to give them a 5-page, kind of informed consent,
Yes.
piece of paper that says, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. These are the risks. These are the benefits. This is what you can expect. Complications are this, et cetera, et cetera. You sign this form and do that. So I've always been that way about any kind of, any kind of procedure or, any kind of treatment that I offer to people. And so I felt that the option for people was to do the same thing for them here with the vaccine. Explain to them what the risks and benefits were, and then do what it is that they wanted us to do.
Yes. And what did the patients choose?
My patients chose to essentially forego the vaccine, um, and and when you're trying to explain what's in the product and you have a 2 foot by 3 foot piece of paper that's all folded up and tied to the box that says intentionally left blank on it,
Mm.
on the front and back side, then they kind of look at you like, well, what are you injecting me with? And I said, well, I really don't know. That this is, this is the information. So they're like, I choose to not get that product.
Yes. Yes. And were the patients relieved that you were understanding and you understood medical choice?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And were more and more patients hearing about you that you were a person who promoted, you know, medical choice?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't advertising any of it. I wasn't telling people out there what we were doing. And, they came to me because I was explaining to them what the risk and benefits were, and we chose an alternative way of treatment.
Yes, so informed consent, very important.
Right.
And, for this, were your colleagues hearing about this, other physicians, or were you getting any pushback?
No, no, like I said, we weren't advertising what it was that we were doing. It was just word of mouth. I did have a fair number of physicians that came in to be treated by me, and or to
Yes.
have their family treated by me. There were a number of people that I knew that, just like you said, when we first met before we went on the podcast, how courageous this was, and I never looked at it from that perspective. I didn't say, hey, look at me over here. Look how, look at my courage profile. This is what I'm doing. I looked at it solely as a means to treat my patients, treat them appropriately, and treat them according to their wills and their desires based upon, like you said, full informed consent. And, the primary tenet of the Hippocratic Oath to first do
Mm.
no harm. So,
Yes. So do no harm. That's what you were doing as a physician. And how long did this go on, or did you ever stop that practice, the vaccine clinic?
Yeah, it went on for about a year and a half.
Mhm.
So I started in May-ish of 2021, and I think we shut everything down, and stopped ordering vaccines in October, November of 22.
Yes. And was that something that you wanted to do? Was close down the vaccine clinic?
Yeah, I just didn't think there was an emergency anymore. I noticed that, that just like every other clinic that was out there, the desire and the uptake of the vaccine at that point was so short, it was so small that it didn't make a lot of sense to kind of still continue to do the vaccine clinic.
Right. Yes. And so from then, 2021 to now in 2025, how have things been for you? Was that the end of it?
Well, unfortunately, that wasn't the end. In January of 23, I was arrested and indicted for giving fake COVID vaccines, and disseminating fake COVID cards.
And why do you think that how did they find out? Like, this seems very interesting turn of events.
Um, so I know it wasn't a patient. I know we weren't turned in by anybody. I know it wasn't certainly any complaints. We never had a complication. I never had a death. I never had anybody have any kind of autoimmune response or any complications, myocarditis or strokes or anything that we see now with the COVID shots. It was, they found out somehow and they did a sting operation on me. Two police officers came in, each individually, separately, and got treated by my office staff, and then filed charges for, for
Wow.
what that was.
Wow. And so was this a complete shock to you that there was this sting operation?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they came and confiscated my phones in the middle of January, with a search warrant. Yeah, January, I don't know, 10th or 11th, something like that. Um, and they showed up with like 11, federal officers in my office,
Wow.
and uh, confiscated my phone and the phone from my office manager.
Wow. And so scary. How long were you incarcerated?
Well, I didn't go to jail until May of 23, and that was for a different reason, which we can get into here. And then I had a second stint in jail in November of 24.
Wow. How long did they put you in jail?
First time was 12 days, and the second time was 22 days.
Wow. And did the community rally around you and,
No.
of course, your family?
Well, my family, my two kids obviously did. My girlfriend at the time, fiance now, certainly did. My close friends, were there. But it was, yeah, there was a fair amount of support for us when we went for our arraignment in January of 23. Um, and then by the time, May, June comes around, we were pretty much on our own.
Wow. Wow. And is this legal trouble, where does it stand today?
I am 31 days from my trial.
Mm, wow.
July 7th is our trial date.
Yes. And do you have the support, Dr. Moore, that you need now?
Well, that's the struggle. This has cost me probably about 80% of my practice revenue, just because of everything that I need to do and the concentration, loss of concentration and loss of ability to kind of really just put your full, mind towards growing your
Yes.
practice and taking care of your patients. And and then on top of that, it's probably cost me 700 and $800,000 in legal expenses or other kind of legal fees and those kinds of things that have been involved in this. So um, I have as I have a give send go that was set up by my kids and my girlfriend. And then we just opened up another one here on, I think it's called Fundraiser. Um, and we've collected probably about $130,000 in legal fees. Most of that was in those first few months. It's been pretty dry since then. The ability to get um, notoriety, publicity, get the word out, has been really difficult.
Wow. And I know that this is such a difficult time for you, your children, your family, your fiance. And, for this trial that's coming up, very important. What are the ramifications? You're hoping it goes well. You hope you get treated fairly. You know, you honored the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm. But what are some of those repercussions?
Well, if I'm convicted on all charges, there's four charges. There's a charge of fraud, charge of conspiracy to commit fraud. There's a charge of counterfeiting, and then a fourth charge, which is was added in January, um, which is destruction of government property. Um, if convicted on all of those and I get the maximum sentence, I could go to jail for 35 years. That I guess that would be exceedingly rare to get, to be, you know, put away for the maximum sentence, but the prosecution certainly wants jail time, as part of a, punishment in this process.
Yes. Dr. Moore, do you think that you are being singled out to, make an example of?
There's no doubt.
Mm,
Um, as we mentioned, I've been jailed twice. And on both occasions, I wasn't the only one. There were four of us. So myself, two of my co-employees, and then a neighbor of mine, and then my business as well. So let's separate the business out because it's a corporation. But um, the four people that were involved in this, when I went to jail in May, two of us did the exact same thing, and I was the only one that went to jail. And then again in November, two of us did the exact same thing, got arrested. And my other one of my other co-defendants got to go home 2 days later, and I was kept in jail for 3 weeks.
wow,
Um,
wow.
there's no doubt that this is a concerted effort to punish me, um, and basically to send a message that says, do what the government tells you to do or else. Um, and I haven't coined this phrase. It's certainly not mine, but I use it very frequently. Um, the, the process is the punishment. So
Mm,
this
mm,
process over the last 2.5 years is also part of that punishment. So, going to jail, having an ankle monitor on you for 3 months, losing your passport, losing the ability to travel, losing the ability to kind of do what you would normally do in the course of your life, having to send in your records every month to a pretrial services officer, being subjected to, random searches at your house, having to get rid of your weapons and your ammunition because they're scared that, they might get shot if they come over to my house because I own guns legally. It's the whole process is part of it. That's what they want to do. They want to bleed you dry financially because they have unlimited resources. We're talking about a case where they claim that I defrauded the government of less than $30,000 worth of product that they paid for. They've probably spent $2 to $3 million on my prosecution alone. To put me in jail, when if they really thought that I had done something wrong, send me a bill for 30 grand and let me pay you guys back. Okay. But
right.
that's not what they want. They want to use this as an example. You're a doctor. You went against what we told you to do. Um, and your punishment is to go to jail, lose your livelihood, lose everything that you have, and lose the ability to practice medicine forever, um, and screw with your kids. I got a 17-year-old, so he's really can't live on his own. Or he could. He's mature enough, but point being is, justice is not part of this process. The process is just the punishment, um, and they want to win. That's it. It's a notch in the prosecutor's belt to say, look at what I did to this plastic surgeon who violated what we think are the laws. Um,
Well,
so
and yet, weren't many congressmen and senators exempt from the COVID vaccine?
Yeah, there's yes, and all the employees of the CDC were exempt, all the employees of the FDA, all of the employees from Pfizer and Moderna, all of them were exempt from it. It's really an interesting phenomenon where, it's kind of like what's good for thee is not good for me. And do as you're told, not as we do. So but that's the way our society is right now. That's the way our government is. Um, and it's the way they want it to be. They, don't don't push back, don't argue. You see it all over the world where they're taking away, freedom of speech. In England, they're putting, women in jail for Facebook posts. They're doing the same in Germany. Reiner Fomick is an attorney who's been in jail for almost 2 years because he started a uh, um, COVID investigation committee or something like that, and they didn't like what he was finding. They picked him up in Mexico, they extradited him back to Germany, and they've had him in jail ever since. Um, Again, it's do as we tell you to do, and and don't argue, or else this is what's going to happen to you.
Well, and did you notice that there were very few people who were brave, who took the kind of risk that you took?
Well, I think there's more than you think.
Mm.
I don't know any of them.
Oh.
Um, I know of I won't use their names, but I know of some celebrities and some journalists and high profile people that have um, essentially had access to what it is that they claim that I did. There was a report in Spain of the CEO of a pharmaceutical company that basically paid some people in Spain for a fake COVID card. And that was news for a few days, and then it just got pushed under the carpet, or swept under the carpet. And there were reportedly over 2,000 kind of high profile athletes, journalists, politicians, and everybody that went to these people. These people were basically doing, either saline shots or COVID shots, or, saline, or, some sort of other shot, or just the free COVID card to people that knew of them, high profile, and they were charging them um, based upon their ability to pay. So,
Mm.
CEO of a, multi-billion dollar pharmaceutical company could pay $100,000 for a COVID card.
Mm.
Okay. A single mom of two, couldn't afford it, but would pay $100 for it. So, that's what they were doing. And it was a scandal for, like I said, a couple of days, and then it just got swept under the carpet. So I think there's way more people that have done what it is that they claim and are accusing me of doing. Um, and thank God for them. Um, but there's a lot of people that are scared to push
Yes.
back. And then there's a lot of people that are just, excuse my French, are just chicken shit.
Mm.
Um, I truly believe that if we would have had 5% of physicians push back,
Yes.
um, that we wouldn't be in this position right now. But everybody complied, everybody towed the line, and everybody just decided to do, whatever the government tells them to do. Um, one of my favorite mottos is nobody looks out for you like you.
Mm.
Um, and it's kind of one of those things that I live by right now because nobody's looking out for my best interests. They might say that they are,
Right.
but only you know what your best interests are. And you're going to look out for your own, for your kids, for your close family. But really, when it comes down to it, what's you're going to look out for you. And I'm not saying that in a selfish way,
Right.
but you know what's best for you, and you can't rely on other people to do that. And there's too many people out there that think that our government has our best interests at hand. Um, but they also, in the same breath, will say how many times our politicians have lied to us, and how many times they promise to do this and then they don't do it, or they do something short of it, or they don't follow through on all of it. And yet they don't connect those dots to this extreme. So we're in a society right now where there's just way too much compliance and way too much reliability on what other people are going to do for you rather than what you can do for yourself.
Well, yes. And you have done the very rare thing that you have done for others. and the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm. So that's amazing. And now people need to rally around you because you were very brave.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. But again, I don't look at it that way.
Mm,
Um, I, it's it's pretty ironic in a way. As a plastic surgeon, one of the first things that pops into people's minds, and I think, in yours as well, is, here's a doc that makes lots of money, okay, very wealthy, very successful, has a nice home, drives a nice car, has a lot of, opportunity to do a lot of things that, the wealthy do in our country.
yes.
Um, and yet, um, I'm the one that stepped out
Wow.
and I'm the one that treated people for free. I never charged anybody a dime, even for my COVID treatments. I never charged anybody for a vaccine. I asked people to donate to a non-profit organization that I knew were doing good things that I was not affiliated with. Um, and that's so the irony is that the person that's out there that's probably supposed to be the least ethical and least moral of all other physicians that are out there, because all we look for is the almighty dollar, right? There's a joke that has been circulating a long time. It's kind of, again, regarding physicians. You kind of, how do you find, how do you hide a dollar bill? Maybe I'll change it to $100 bill. How do you hide $100 bill from a general surgeon? You put it on the patient's body, okay? Because the story is that, general surgeons, don't examine people, okay? Um, how do you hide a $100 bill from an orthopedic surgeon? You put it in a book, okay? Because the insinuation is that orthopods are just a bunch of dumb guys that just do human carpentry, and okay, and so they never look at a book. And then how do you hide a $100 bill from a plastic surgeon? And the answer to that is you can't. Okay. So, again, so along those lines, it's pretty ironic that out of all the people that are out there, and in this kind of a quandary, the one person who's supposed to be the least moral, least ethical, and the greediest ones of all of us is the one that's on the hook for having treated his patients for free, having taken care of them and not collected any money, lost money, stands to lose his job. I've already lost my hospital privileges. I've already lost my board certification. I've already lost anything and everything that I've worked, my whole life to achieve. And, and I did it for no money. So
Wow.
anyway.
Well, well, God sees all. And thank you so much for your courage, Dr. Moore. It's very important. We need courage, and today we have to do it for our kids. And my last question for you is what makes you feel alive?
Uh, what makes me feel alive, is knowing that I've done the right thing,
Mm,
and knowing that I didn't hurt anybody,
mm,
and knowing that whether I'm alive to see it, or whether it's something that's written about me, or whether it's something that my kids carry on that legacy, that they will look at, that what I did and what we did here in our clinic, was the right thing to do.
mm,
And I
mm,
truly have no regrets. I um, I just I haven't really been a super religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. I've certainly um, realized that this is a good versus evil
mm,
scenario and situation in our current times. Um, and so I've spent a lot more time um, reflecting on God and morality, and um, and where we are, and trying to truly do what I can to fight evil.
Wow. No regrets. You've done the right thing. And thank you, Dr. Moore.
Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for having me on.